The dropships of the Zenthari Dominion hissed through the sulfur-thick clouds of Caro 9's upper atmosphere, their black hulls slicing through the pale green sky like silent blades. Beneath them, the once thriving human colony appeared lifeless, sprawl of modular structures half swallowed by vines, empty courtyards littered with overturned furniture, and motionless vehicles half buried in dust. Not a single human in sight. Commander Harkzol stood at the edge of the central plaza, his ornate armor gleaming with the crimson insignia of conquest. His mandibles clicked in satisfaction as his secondary eyes scanned the stillness. So this is what the Terrans call a colony? He muttered, stepping over a broken child's toy that had been left to bleach in the twin suns. How quaint! Beside him, one of the Dominion's sensor officers adjusted his ocular relay, confusion tightening the movement of his tentacles. No heat signatures, Commander. No movement. No electromagnetic emissions. It's like they vanished. Of course they vanished, Harkzol scoffed. They knew what was coming. Probably fled like vermin into the hills. We'll clean the place out in a day. Troops spread across the colony in a flawless sweep formation, dark-armored Zenthari soldiers. Tall and insectoid, their rifles slung with relaxed arrogance. They moved through homes with shattered windows and open doors, finding half-cooked meals, laundry still drying on lines, books left mid-read. The kind of panic that left no time to pack, but still no bodies, no blood, just absence. The silence began to stretch. It was too complete. Harkzol's top lieutenant, Veka, stepped forward, his voice low and uncertain. Commander, do you find it odd that not a single body has been found? No resistance, no signs of struggle. Not even animal life remains. Perhaps they all starved, Harkzol said with a dry snort. Their primitive logistics often collapse without warning. You'll learn that, Veka, if you stop over-analyzing everything. Still, the soldiers moved more cautiously now. Shadows stretched unnaturally across walls. An overturned dining table looked almost deliberate, like someone had set a trap and changed their mind. The smell of the air had changed to less rot, more earth, soil, living, breathing wilderness edging closer. And yet, the scanners remained silent. Primitive creatures don't hide well, Harkzol muttered again, almost to himself, narrowing his central vision on a rusted playground at the edge of the colony. The swings moved slightly, but there was no wind. That's when he felt it. Not sound, not sight. Just pressure like the forest itself was watching him breathe in the dense trees beyond the colony's edge. Something shifted. Not visibly. Not enough for sensors. Just enough to tighten the chest, to tickle the back of the brain that once feared fire in the night. Something was out there, watching. But the commander, proud and unshaken, shook the sensation away with a click of irritation. He turned to his troops and raised his voice. Search every structure. Mark the tunnels and wells for scanning. I want confirmation by nightfall. This colony belongs to the Dominion now. What he didn't see, what none of them saw, was the slight shimmer behind the rusted tractor in the field. A slow movement of breathing reeds laid against a figure still as stone. A smear of human skin painted in dirt, moss, and resin. Not hiding, not waiting, not hunting. The wind rolled low through the trees like a whispering warning, carrying with it the dry scent of dust and decay. Just beyond the artificial borders of the colony, where human concrete gave way to dense alien undergrowth, the jungle of Caro 9 shifted too slowly, too subtly for Zenthari sensors to register. The recon patrol moved in formation, 12 soldiers armored in gleaming black alloy, each step calculated, each breath controlled. Their helmets scanned for heat, electromagnetic fields, motion, anything that might indicate life. Nothing. Sector Delta cleared. barked Trooper Irix through his comms. Still no contact. Still no humans. Behind him, Sergeant Varlak narrowed his glowing pupil slits at the dense thicket just beyond the ridge. It looked like any other patch of foliage-wide, flat-leafed plants, violet blossoms that released no pollen, vines strung lazily across the branches. But it was too quiet. "Commander Harkzol," Varlak transmitted. "We're advancing into the western quadrant. Still no visual or thermal signatures, but the flora. It feels different here." "Different how?" came the annoyed reply. "I can't explain. The temperature gradients are inconsistent. Pockets of heat and cold where there shouldn't be any. Avoid the philosophical commentary and proceed. Sergeant, the colony is abandoned. You're chasing ghosts." But Varlak didn't move right away. His instincts buried beneath years of training and confidence in tech-ched.irix climbed a narrow rise overlooking a shallow depression in the jungle floor. "I think I see something. Broken sensor node, maybe?" He raised his rifle cautiously and stepped forward, the leaf canopy above him. Suddenly, RUSTLED. It wasn't wind. There was no time to scream. A figure dropped silently from above, its skin painted in a shifting chameleon pattern of leaves and dust. Its breathing mask was made from shredded vines and bark. The human's eyes were the only uncovered part cold, focused, and filled with purpose. A single strike low, fast, precise cut through the gap between Irix's helmet and collar. Blood misted into the air before the soldier's body crumpled. Soundlessly, "Contact." Varlak shouted, spinning with his plasma rifle. But nothing moved. No target, just shadows. Just trees and the jungle erupted. Muzzle flashes blinked from what had seemed like fallen logs and clumps of moss. Suppressed rounds punched into Zenthari armor joints, tearing through weak spots with uncanny accuracy. One soldier spun wildly, struck 3 times in the side before toppling over. "Where are they?" A trooper screamed, firing blindly into the canopy. But the humans were already gone, disappeared into dirt, leaves and angles the alien eye wasn't built to perceive. Their camouflage wasn't digital. It was primal, learned, practiced, perfected. One human appeared for less than a heartbeat, emerging from what looked like solid stone to fire 2 shots that shattered Varlak's shoulder plate, then melted. Back into the shadows without a trace. Harkzol's voice crackled through the comms. "Status report, Sergeant. What's happening out there?" Varlak tried to speak, but only wheezed as blood leaked from his shoulder and fear froze his lungs. This is a trap," another soldier whispered, trembling, and deep in the thicket, lying belly down in the underbrush, Mira Vance exhaled softly and tapped her earpiece. "Sector West neutralized. Confirmed 4 down. No injuries on our side." Her voice was steady. Her heartbeat calm. The young man beside her, maybe 19, still shaking from his first. The cave system beneath the western ridge of Caro 9 was damp and quiet, its walls pulsing with soft, phosphorescent moss that cast pale green light over the faces of those inside. Mira Vance knelt beside a large map drawn crudely in charcoal. An old polymer, lines etched with fingertips and smudged with sweat. Around her, a dozen figures crouched, their faces streaked with dirt and paint, breathing slow and controlled. They didn't speak much. Not unless they had to. In this war, sound killed. Jalen, her second in command, leaned against the far wall, his broad shoulders trembling slightly from exertion. He had just returned from burying the last of the enemy's recon troopers. His hands still smelled of blood and resin. He didn't speak either. Not yet. Mira finished drawing a new perimeter line across the map and glanced toward the entrance of the cave, where a soft breeze carried the distant echo of plasma fire. The alien soldiers were retaliating wildly. blasting trees and shadows, trying to fight something they couldn't find. They're angry now, Mira said softly. Good. That means they're scared. Yalin wiped a smear of soot from his cheek. You're sure this next area is ready? They'll move north by dusk, she replied, tapping the outer circle. It's their only path forward that isn't already a graveyard. We guide them there. He exhaled and sat down heavily beside her, watching her hands as she worked. You know, I used to be a technician. I fixed mining bots. Now I tie vines to rifles and sleep in mud. She didn't smile, but her voice gentled. You're doing more than that. You're surviving. That's the only currency that matters now. Footsteps approached. A young girl barely 15, wrapped in layers of hand-dyed cloth and moss. Netting entered with a canteen and a message slate. Mira took the water, drank, then flipped the slate. Handwritten. Another patrol moving east. 3 aliens. 1. Injured. Moving slow dot, she nodded. Let them go. The wounded carry panic back to the others. Let fear do the killing. Yalin watched her carefully. You've changed since New Carthage. Mira stiffened. That was a different war, she said. They bombed civilians, Yalin continued. You weren't like this. You still believed. In rules. She looked at him now, her voice low. There are no rules here. Not when they melt children's beds with orbital heat. Not when they call us insects. She stood and adjusted her camo harness. Her rifle, wrapped in bark-colored cloth, hung silently at her back. Her knife, a long, bone-handled blade with initials carved into its side, was strapped to her thigh. Do you know what we are, Yalin? She asked, her voice nearly a whisper. We're ghosts. We're phantoms. Every breath we take is a weapon. Every still second we survive is one more second they bleed. Yalin didn't argue. He only nodded, rising to follow. Outside, the jungle buzzed softly with life. Distant plasma bursts still echoed. The aliens were firing at movement, illusions, shadows created by humans who no longer needed machines to hide. They had become part of the world now. They had returned to the roots of war where patience, stillness, and silence ruled the battlefield. Mira stepped out first, disappearing almost instantly into the foliage. Her skin was covered in mud, her eyes painted, to reflect the canopy above. When she moved, it was like the trees themselves shifted. Behind her, the others followed: soldiers, farmers, children with slings, hunters with crude knives and advanced vision. No longer just survivors. They were predators now. And the aliens had no idea the next breath they took would be their last. Rain fell hard that evening, slicing through the jungle in thin silver sheets. The water pooled in low places, ran in thin streams down tree trunks, and soaked the alien patrols slogging through the brush. For the Zenthari Dominion, designed for dry desert warfare, it was a nuisance. For the humans of Caro 9, it was camouflage. Commander Harkzol stood beneath a makeshift canopy of alien alloy panels, water dripping from his mandibles as he reviewed the data scrolls on his portable wrist slab. Every scan, every pulse, every wide area sweep came back the same. No sign of human resistance. No visible tech. No heat. No movement. No life. And yet, his troops were dying. 9 lost in the past 48 hours. Not to overwhelming firepower. Not to airstrikes. But to knives, arrows, disappearances, shadows. He turned to his tech officer, a pale-skinned Zenthari named Rethkar, who was hunched beside a mobile sensor array. The device buzzed and rotated, spitting streams of alien characters into the air. Status? Harkzol demanded. Still nothing. The terrain gives off too much interference. Thermal scans blur against the heat of the vines. EM pulses bounce back like we're inside a dome. We're not, Harkzol growled. We're in a jungle, and we control this planet. Rethkar glanced up, his eyes wide. Then why are we bleeding, Commander? Harkzol didn't answer. Another scream echoed from the south ridge. The commander spun. Who was that? Before anyone could respond, a trooper limped into view alone, helmet half melted, one arm hanging useless at his side. They came out. Of the ground, he gasped. They weren't there. And then they were eyes in the dirt, like the roots had hands. He collapsed. Harkzol stared at him, then turned back to Rethkar. Our sensors are blind. Why? Rethkar shook his head slowly. Because they're not using signals. They're not emitting anything. They're not hiding with technology. They're hiding from it. No fields, no noise, no heat. Just instinct. They've tuned themselves to the planet. They've made themselves invisible, another officer whispered. No, Harkzol muttered. They've made us deaf. Far. Above them, in the towering canopy, Mira lay flat across a moss-covered branch, unmoving. Her body was painted in streaks of dull green and gray. Her breath was shallow, silent. Beneath her, the alien officers stood like statues in the rain. She tapped her earpiece, twice no words. Just a signal dot in the underbrush. Yalin moved. One step, then stillness again. The rest of the team fanned out, every body painted, silent. Barefoot, the wet ground covered their scent. The leaves swallowed their noise dot in their hands, were simple weapons bows strung from dried tendon. Carbon knives stolen from wreckage, hand-built crossbows and slings. But in their eyes burned the fire of something older than plasma or energy shields dot. It was focus, the kind that couldn't be scanned. The kind bred into species who learned to kill by listening, not aiming. One Zenthari officer turned sharply, alerted by something a ripple of water, a gust of air. He raised his plasma rifle. He didn't even have time to scream. Mira dropped silently behind him and slit his throat in one motion, catching his rifle before it hit the mud. Two others fell in synchronized flashes, one taken down by a dart to the eye. Another dragged backward into ferns and vanished. From the tree line, Yalin whispered, 4 down. Sector 4 silent. Mira wiped her blade clean and lightning cracked across the sky in jagged white lines, illuminating the jungle in a flash of harsh brilliance. For a brief second, everything stood frozen in contrast, the bodies of fallen Zenthari, the thick vines glistening with rain, and the ancient trees that loomed like watchful sentinels. Then the world dropped back into darkness, and with it, silence, but not for long. A shriek tore through the eastern perimeter, a sound not of pain, but terror. It echoed off the canopy and carried down to the command tent, where Commander Harkzol turned sharply. His 4 eyes narrowed. Another scream followed, shorter, choked off abruptly. Harkzol activated his comlink. Report, Eastern Watch, now. Only static replied. He stormed out into the clearing, his boots sinking into the wet mud, past soldiers adjusting their rifles and scanning blindly into the shadows. They were jittery, their heads on a swivel, fingers too close to their triggers. Need night vision, one muttered. It doesn't help, another snapped back. I saw one of them, right in front of me. Blinked, and they were gone. A nervous officer approached Harkzol. Sir, morale is breaking. We lost another 8. Last night, all outside the perimeter. They're pulling us apart. Harkzol's mandibles clenched. Have the engineers finished assembling the sonic towers? They're online, sir. 3 of them. Linked to motion sensors and perimeter scans. Good, he said, voice low. Let's flush them out. Across the camp, 3 tall black. Pillars pulsed with blue light, humming softly as they activated. In theory, the towers emitted a subsonic wave designed to disorient anything organic, human, animal, insect. The Dominion had used them to great effect on unruly colonies in the Past, the jungle pulsed. The hum grew louder. Then came the screams, but not from the jungle. From the towers, the first exploded with a sharp crack, as if something had struck it from the inside. A second followed, fire blooming from its control panel. The third began to spark and twist, as though vines had grown through its joints, pried it apart, and crushed it like a dead insect in the trees above. Mira crouched beside the remains of a sonic tower. She had jammed its circuitry with waterlogged fiber from native plants, fused its controls with sap and static-generating moss. It had screamed before it died, shorting out and bursting in a beautiful display of failure. Below, the aliens panicked. "Isn't warfare?" shouted a Zenthari sergeant. "They're everywhere." "No," came Mira's voice, broadcast through the remains of the broken tower, her tone low and clear. "We're under you." Beneath the ground, tunnels dug through clay and roots shifted. Human fighters emerged like phantoms painted in the color of the soil, their bodies cloaked in fungus-dyed fabrics. They struck quickly, silently. One soldier emerged beneath a Dominion tent, slitting the throat of a sleeping officer and vanishing into the mud. Another dropped from the trees and landed behind a supply runner, driving a blade through his chest before disappearing again. The Zenthari fired in all directions, and the jungle screamed, but it wasn't alive. It was sound, human sound. Recordings of Terran wildlife, of battlefields, of war drums and thunder. Hidden speakers inside fruit pods released chaos on command. The third scream tower, nicknamed the Scream Tree by Mira's team, triggered. Last, it wailed with a chorus of voices, babies crying, soldiers roaring, women sobbing looped together into a cacophony that drove one of the Zenthari to his knees. "Make it stop," he shrieked, clawing at his helmet. Mira watched through foliage, her eyes calm. Yalin crouched beside her, tense. "They're breaking," he whispered. "Not yet," she replied, "but close. Let them tear at shadows. Let their leaders hear. Ghosts. Then we strike. Do we kill them all?" She paused, double quotes, "No. We let some live. Let them crawl back to the stars and warn the others." Yalin exhaled slowly. "You sure we're not becoming monsters?" Mira looked at him, rain streaking down her painted face. "Monsters kill for pleasure." She raised her hand, signaling. Her fighters to hold. "We kill because this is our home. And because they brought fire to our forest." In the distance, another Zenthari officer fired into the dark and screamed when no one screamed back. The jungle swallowed his voice, and Mira, hidden in that silence, smiled. Dawn came slowly over Caro 9, but it brought no peace. The twin suns bled orange and violet through the mist, casting long shadows through the ruined Dominion encampment. Smoke drifted up from melted machinery. Blood darkened the mud. Zenthari corpses lay scattered in unnatural poses, some still gripping rifles. Others staring blankly into the sky with no visible wounds. To the untrained eye, it looked like the aftermath of a battle. To Mira Vance, it looked like progress. She watched from a rise above the carnage, her camouflage cloak blending perfectly with the stone and lichen. Only her eyes moved, scanning. The remaining patrols. A few dozen Zenthari still held formation near the command tent. The rest had vanished, deserted, captured, or buried. "They're moving more erratically," Yalin whispered from behind her. "Some haven't slept. Their armor's running hot. No one's talking on comms. They're isolated," Mira said. "Paranoid. Good. That means they'll make mistakes." She slid back from the ridge, silent as the fog, and the two of them descended through the jungle like phantoms. Around them, the forest came alive not with birdsong or animal noise, but with the quiet rustle of humans in motion. Small groups repositioned under root systems, in hollowed-out logs, behind layered camouflage nets. There were no tents, no fires, no light, just breath and patience. Mira entered the central hide, a damp, moss-covered cavern beneath an ancient tree. Inside, 2 medics checked a wounded girl's arm. An old woman carved leaf fiber into rope. A young boy sat sharpening a jagged metal shard. "Update," Mira said, kneeling near the fireless map zone. A runner handed her a slate. On it were crude sketches of the Zenthari layout, overlaid with new marks. One showed a vulnerable opening in their perimeter, 2 guards posted, 1 injured. Mira's eyes narrowed. "They think we're trying to push them back," she said. "But we're not. We're hurting them." "To what?" Yalin asked, frowning. She looked up at him. "To the cliff's edge." He blinked. "You mean?" Mira stood. "There's no point killing them all. Not today. What we want is fear. Legacy. Let them remember us. Let them fear the trees on every planet they invade after this." She turned to the small circle of fighters. "Get your kits. Paint up. You have until sundown." They moved without question. By dusk, the humans were already in place, buried beneath loose soil, hidden in the boughs, submerged in the swamp. Every breath measured, every angle planned, every sound calculated. The Zenthari moved in clusters now, weapons raised even as their hands shook. Their commander Harkzol stood at the center of the fraying lines, trying to rally his forces. His armor was dented, his right arm splinted, his face drawn tight with sleeplessness and confusion. He stepped onto the old mining road, the only clear path through the jungle. And Mira was waiting for him. She emerged slowly, deliberately, 20 meters ahead, hands empty, feet bare, face streaked in red clay. Harkzol froze. "You," he growled, voice raw. "You're the one leading this." Mira didn't blink. "You came to conquer farmers," she said. "Miners, children. You brought shields and plasma and numbers. You thought that made you strong." He raised his rifle. "Surrender, or I'll end this now." She smiled just enough to chill his blood. "You already lost," she said. She snapped her fingers. The road beneath him exploded in a net of vines and smoke. From both sides, humans surged forward, not charging, but flowing, like water over rock. They didn't shout. They didn't fire randomly. Every move was precise, surgical. Zenthari soldiers screamed as the night after the final ambush was unlike the others. No Zenthari plasma fire lit the sky. No shrieking alarms pierced the silence. No patrols stumbled blindly into traps. For the first time in weeks, the jungle rested. But not because the war was over, because the enemy was finally gone. Mira Vance sat beneath the canopy, her back against a gnarled old tree, fingers coated in dark earth. She had removed her face paint, but left the rust mud still streaked her arms and her cloak. Smelled of smoke and crushed leaves. Around her, a quiet hum buzzed through the air as the fighters of Caroline returned, one by one, slipping from the brush like ghosts returning to the living. Yalin emerged from the dark, his chest heaving with breath and soaked in sweat. He carried no weapon. His eyes found hers. "They're gone," he said. She didn't react. They left everything. Supplies, equipment, even wounded. Took the dropships and fled into orbit. The last one launched 20 minutes ago. Mira nodded slowly. "Did they bury their dead?" Yalin hesitated. "No." She sighed and closed her eyes for a moment. Then they learned nothing. Behind them, children were helping carry the wounded back into the caves. A man with a makeshift bandage around his thigh handed out ration packs from a salvaged Zenthari crate. An old woman was humming a lullaby no one remembered the words to. Mira rose and stepped into the circle, speaking quietly but clearly. "No fires tonight, no songs. We stay hidden one more night." One of the younger fighters, barely 16, frowned. "But they're gone. We won. We won this time, she said, her voice calm but firm. But now they know who we are, and they'll tell the stars. She crouched beside a young girl, cradling her dog. The animal whimpered and licked her hand. You did well, Mira whispered, brushing dirt from the child's cheek. He stayed quiet the whole time? The girl nodded, proud. Mira smiled faintly, then looked up at the starlit sky through the canopy dache ALE and stepped beside her again. You think they'll come back? She didn't answer right away. They will, she said finally. Not these ones, but others. Different tech, smarter tactics, less arrogance. He looked around at the worn, bloodied survivors, many of them wounded, tired, and forever changed. And us? He asked. What will we be next time? Myra's gaze didn't waver from the stars. We'll still be shadows, still be roots under their boots, still be stories they whisper about before they sleep. There was a long pause. Then Yalin said softly, You could have killed Harkzol. You had him. I did kill him, Mira replied, her voice a whisper. Just not the way he expected. And she was right high above Caro 9, on the bridge of a fleeing Dominion warship. Commander Harkzol sat trembling in silence. His body had healed, but his mind had not. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Not the woman, the silence. The way she moved without sound. The way the forest had opened for her. The galaxy would know her name, but they would fear her legacy dot back on the surface. Mira stood among the trees, cloaked in shadow, her people slowly gathering behind her like roots spreading underground. This was no longer just a colony. This was a warning. The next sunrise over Caro 9 was golden and soft, bleeding gently through the mist-draped treetops like the jungle itself had taken a breath for the first time in weeks. Birds, real birds, not speakers, sang. Again, insects buzzed. The canopy danced lazily with wind. Nature, long silenced by war, was waking. But the humans did not celebrate. There were no cheers, no flags raised, no victory speeches. They moved quietly through the underbrush, gathering what was left rifles buried beneath camouflage nets, traps that hadn't been sprung, the wounded who hadn't spoken since the first ambush. Silence had become part of them now, as vital as breath dot at the edge of the old colony. Mira Vance stood on a hill that overlooked what remained of the Zenthari encampment. Burned-out towers leaned like snapped bones. Plasma scorch marks painted. The trees. The command tent was gone, collapsed in on itself during the final retreat. Even now, the smell of ozone and blood clung to the wet air. Beside her, Yalin unfolded a salvaged data slate. On it flickered a single broadcast, the one they'd let escape. Harkzol's desperate message to his superiors in the Dominion. He tapped it once, letting it play. Do not underestimate them. They are not primitive. They are not disorganized. They became the terrain. Our sensors, our weapons, none of it mattered. They used silence like a sword. I am not requesting reinforcements. I am warning you. Caro 9 is lost. But more than that, we were never in control. The message ended. Jalen looked up. They'll believe him. They'll believe enough, Mira said, eyes locked on the jungle below. And that's what matters. She turned and walked toward the tree line, where her people were already breaking down their hides, erasing every trace of their presence. No structures, no roads. Just trees, just soil, just disappearance. Because this wasn't the kind of war you won by being seen. It was the kind you survived by vanishing. An hour later, the last humans melted into the forest. There would be no permanent camps, no static colonies. Not for a while. They had become part of the jungle now, its watchers, its defenders. And far above, in the orbit where Dominion ships had once hovered like gods, The skies were empty. Not quiet dot in the galactic core. Weeks later, the Zenthari Council gathered to hear Harkzol's full report. The chamber was silent. 1,000 alien dignitaries, watching as the hologram of a single human woman flickered into view. Mira Vance painted in dirt and blood, silent, her eyes calm. "She let me live," Harkzol whispered. "She wanted me to speak. So here I am, speaking. Don't go back. Don't ever go back." The chamber broke into chaos voices shouting, arguing, demanding strategies, plans, revenge. But somewhere, in the corner of the room, an old military tactician long retired, scarred by a forgotten war, leaned forward and muttered, "They used camouflage?" "No," someone whispered beside him. "They were camouflage." Back on Caro 9, deep beneath a tree whose roots were now webbed with tripwire and quiet sensors, Mira knelt beside a new child one who had never seen a starship, who had only known life in the leaves. The girl asked, "Will they come again?" Mira tucked a fern behind the girl's ear. "Maybe." The girl paused. "Will we hide?" "No," Mira said gently. "We'll wait." And then she smiled.